Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca, Canada's authority on home ownership. Welcome back to the show, Ross.
And thanks for having me back, Jim.
Ross, we have a question from Trevor in Duncan, BC. He says, Ross, with listing prices rising to the point many first-time home buyers are being priced out of their local markets, our government decides to come flying in to save the day and increases the stress test, which just makes it harder for first-time home buyers to get a mortgage. It's starting to feel that the government and real estate industry really hate first-time home buyers, or am I just imagining things?
Well, I think Trevor, to a certain degree, you're misunderstanding things, but your misunderstanding is understandable because you've been led down a path that has led you to these misunderstandings. So the government does not have the power to halt a correcting housing market and to reverse it. It does not. It has had levers at its disposal that they could pull. When you pull those levers are no longer available to be pulled. This current OSFI change is not targeted at first-time buyers, actually. It's targeted at trade-up buyers and buyers with uninsured mortgages. In other words, people with more than 20% down, which right now is the vast majority of people active in the market. This is why you get your average price increases more at this time of the year, because most of your sales are trade-ups. There's not enough first-time buyers entering the market to hold the price down. Again, that gets weaponized by organized real estate against the home buyer. Again, legacy of the seller beneficial home trading infrastructure that exists in North America. This stress test change is a logical move by the OSFI, Trevor. Okay, this is a logical move. It will not impact the market, but organized real estate may use it, may weaponize this change against you, the home buyer, and against the OSFI itself. Because you see, what the Canadian Real Estate Association, organized real estate, the real estate brokers across Canada need to do is extract themselves from lying to the public, since 2013, but more specifically since April of last year when the lockdown first happened. Organized real estate has weaponized every single housing market metric at its disposal to get the public to believe falsehoods, as, we've said in the show in the past. So what that means is when the market finally does take the negative turn, which again, as we've said in the show, the market really has been slowing now for the last 6 months, or last 5 months. We're just waiting to get our final data for March to understand what's going on there. You have to remember, for us, we never look at a housing market on the first or second day of the following month because sales are still being reported from the previous month. So we actually count sales that take place in a given month, and we adjust for the number of trading days that take place in that month, the number of effective trading days that take place in that month, so that we're always using an accurate comparison from one period of time to the next. But this stress test, that's what's going on here. Mr. Rudin at the OSFI, when he made the original stress changes in 2016, he was announced, and then again 2017 was announced, basically effective the beginning of the following years. He made that move because the banks were following predatory lending practices that he was not aware that they were actually doing. Because you have to understand, the banks don't give the OSFI their average gross debt service ratio or the quintile breakdowns of the gross debt service ratios of their new mortgage originations. That information is proprietary to each individual bank, and they never give it to anyone. Actually, they have fought against it for years. I wish that specific data point, that's one of the very few data points that we could actually use. I mean, we have all the others we need. That one will give us a little bit more insight to which bank stocks to buy, for the sake of the argument. That information never goes to the OSFI. So the OSFI is really flying blind here. They are having to institute policies when they become aware of predatory practices taking place at the banks. First was that they didn't realize the banks were using the 39% maximum gross debt service ratio on low credit score home buyers to allow those home buyers to take the biggest mortgage possible. The OSFI didn't think that the banks would be doing that, when in fact the banks, that's exactly what they were doing. OSFI had to take action upon that. After studying the impact, they realized, oh, wait a second, I guess it's true that that's also happening with trade-up buyers. And they took action on that front, second phase of the V20. Now they brought in this new change. Originally, when we first sent a response to the OSFI, I think if I'd have to look back at the emails, it was back, I think, in 2014, 2015. They responded to us. It was a very nice letter that came back, and we asked them to institute a variable gross debt service ratio. We explained why, and we explained the practices that were ongoing. They thanked us, but that was it. The policy changes took place after. I'm not saying the policy changes took place because of our reach out to them, but clearly there was some educational component to what we were reaching out and telling them. They responded. This right now, the 5.25% is actually part of our original recommendation when we set them. Because once interest rates go above a certain point, the variable gross debt service ratio really doesn't matter. It's only when it's below a certain point when it needed to come into play. The fact that the economists, the team at OSFI, didn't understand how home buyers buy homes, how they're directed by realtors and bankers into making certain decisions. In other words, decisions they may not make if they have all the information available to them. But if they have all that information, that means the banks and realtors are going to make less money. The OSFI acted. This is a case in point here. By raising this to 5.25%, what they're effectively doing is they're offsetting the 6 major Canadian banks' ability to play with the 5-year posted rate as a way to grow their bank profits. Right now at 4.75, after a month or so of rising interest rates or rising bond rates, and without the Canadian banks playing with that rate, like without them moving it in tandem with the change in the bond rates, the banks have clearly signaled that once again they're playing games with the Canadian public. And the OSFI this time around clearly sees what's going on. Now, this manipulation has gone on since the early 90s. It's only become known since around 2015. It's been proven since that period of time because you can track how the banks have reacted. So right now, the rate already should probably be at 5.25%, 5-year posted rate, or certainly 5.19%, but they haven't moved it. The banks have left it there. They've left it there for a reason. The reason for it is because the mortgage qualification rate. They want to book as much mortgages as they can in this, what they call the hot housing market, so that their shareholders see bigger returns in the quarterly statements from the banks. The OSFI has simply acted to stop this predatory practice from going on any further. You're going to see every bank respond to this in a different way. All banks will respond to it. They'll respond to it based on how their mortgage book is currently structured, because each of the banks has a totally unique mortgage book. But the OSFI does not get access to that mortgage book. They only know the amount of mortgage debt that's outstanding, and they may know the average amortization, but they don't know which quintile of mortgages falls into which category. you're feeling that the government and the real estate industry hates first-time home buyers. Or am I imagining this? You're coming forward with the suggestion, oh, it's a conspiracy. Oh, no. I can't think that way. It can't be a conspiracy. Look, I don't know. I've had this discussion with Jim in the past. I can't believe that the bank economists are as stupid as they appear to be when they speak in the Canadian media. I can't really believe when they issue reports that are as foolish as the reports that they issue, that they genuinely are this ignorant to the report that they're issuing. So that makes me think myself, oh, well, they really know this isn't true, but they're telling the Canadian public, oh, no, we believe it. As Jim and I have been speaking, I think, over the last couple of years, because of his experience as a reporter, I think I have come to accept, no, they really don't know this stuff. They really do believe what they're saying. They really believe their words are true. Doesn't mean they're not talking the book of their mortgage book of their bank, but they are still talking, they still believe things that are factually provable to be not true. So it's not like there's a conspiracy theory here against you. What you have is a culmination of about 25 years of myths about the housing market being beat down upon every single human being in North America. It is a consequence of the design of the home trading infrastructure, which is designed to be seller beneficial, get the highest price possible. It is the reason why there have been no housing market metrics released since 2005, when buyer agency was fully legalized across Canada. The reason why there have been no new metrics released is because of that cover-up for the previous 70 years of deception of home buyers across the country. I'll conclude this topic in this manner. Think about it. Imagine if you're a salesman, you're an industry that has lied to the Canadian public for 70 years, and you are faced with having to tell the Canadian public that you lied to them, even though there was a legitimate excuse why you lied, i.e., you were legally required to only represent sellers to get those sellers the highest price possible. If you hadn't told all of your clients that, you're in a catch-22. Imagine you're Royal LePage, a major corporation who has built their entire business on a deception that were working for home buyers up until 2005, when legally they couldn't. They would lose their real estate license if they were caught trying to do anything to get you a lower price on a home as a home buyer. They would have their real estate license taken away. Now imagine what would happen to your share value if the Canadian public turned against you. They have never been able to do that. I mean, buyer agency is still relatively new. It's only 2021, meaning we're just at 17 years into buyer agency in this country. This is a new phenomenon. Most real estate agents in this country still don't know how to practice buyer agency. I would say 98% or more of the real estate agents in this country don't know how to practice buyer agency. Home inspection firms are still using home inspections that were designed before buyer agency became legal. If they weren't using those home inspections, you would be getting a totally different home inspection report as a home buyer. Mortgage lending is still built on seller beneficial, a home trading infrastructure, before it was legal to represent buyers. That's why your mortgages are still done under a mortgage appraisal standard that is designed to get the highest price possible for the seller. Now, mortgage brokers don't understand this, right? Real estate agents don't understand this. Economists don't understand. Unless you sold thousands of homes to thousands of families, and unless you sat across the negotiating table with thousands of your fellow realtors, and maybe if it was generations of your family to do so, and your family had an open, ongoing dialogue with one another about how the industry works and how you had to work around it, maybe that information simply was never available. But what I can tell you is this, Trevor. The government cannot save a correcting housing market. Right now, on Thursday of this week, there's going to be an announcement of an average selling price from the Canadian Real Estate Association, which, using our data, if that number was true, would mean that the net wealth of homeowners across Canada has increased $1 trillion since April of last year. Knowing the number that the Canadian Real Estate is going to report on Thursday, and the false beliefs that they have everyone believe, including themselves, the number they're actually releasing will state that during a national lockdown, a year of turmoil, death, recession, the value of the Canadian housing stock has increased $1 trillion. Now, Trevor, let me ask you something. Last April, that $1 trillion did not exist. The value of the Canadian housing stock was $1 trillion lower based on how they calculate it. I can't help it that calculation is a fraud, but that's how they calculate it. Thursday, what's going to be announced is magically $1 trillion was created out of thin air. The opinion of a random 430,000 home buyers is going to magically have created $1 trillion of wealth in this country. $1 trillion. Trevor, $1 trillion. The government is worried about a couple $100 billion of debt they've taken on. It's $1 trillion right now. The government couldn't stop the damage that is being done right now to the economy. And that's only a couple $100 billion. Where are they going to come up with $1 trillion? And that's only since April. Let's not talk about the house price illusion that happened the 5 years before that period of time. We're talking trillions of dollars, Trevor. Is it a conspiracy theory? I don't know. All I know is this. The OSFI is the only body in this country since 2016 who has taken proactive decisions to try to help Canadian families. They have tried to protect Canadians against the predatory practices of the banks, the mortgage brokers, and the realtors. That's all I can speak to, but that's what I see.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, Royal LePage announced yesterday that house prices would increase another 13.5% across Canada this year. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Royal LePage house price increases. Okay. So Royal LePage, first of all, doesn't measure the average price. They have their mythical median price. Now, their median price is massively higher for some strange reason than the Canadian average purchase price. As a matter of fact, it's over $200,000 more, right? When I look at the average purchase price at the end of last year in Canada, it was $500,000. Okay, $500,000. Royal LePage is saying it's $750,000. Whoa, excuse me, that's a 50% increase. You poor Canadians. I can imagine how you were so deceived by all of these different parties, all speaking crazy numbers which never match up, but always point to one thing: thumbs up on house prices getting higher. The median price they use is from the real estate boards that their brokers are working at, which they have tried to frame as their proprietary data. Well, what proprietary property data actually means to us is that we're the only ones who can read it. Now, in our case, that's true. We use transactional data. So the property data that we use is transactional data. Transactional data is the full data set that covers a home over its history. That's not what Royal LePage uses. They use their own version of proprietary data. Their data is so proprietary that it created a $750,000 a median price across Canada in the first quarter of 2021. Again, I stress, at the beginning of this year, December, The average purchase price in Canada was $567, and the previous December was $503. This is a $250,000 increase over what it was in December of 2019 when the lockdown happened. Now, this is a crazy number. Let me explain something to your listeners. When these reports used to come out, when I was a sales rep, we used to laugh at them at the office. They were the biggest laugh, well, one of the biggest laughs we would have when it made headline news. Now, the agents laughed because it was going to give them a boost in business. So even though less than not even 10% of Korea's membership works at Royal LePage, the other 90% plus got a benefit from these reports because Canadians believed them. Royal LePage had a long history of being the number one company in Canada before RE/MAX came along and knocked them off the throne. And now we have a whole plethora of real estate franchising companies in this country. This report is something that you have no way of ever fact-checking, okay? It is Royal LePage's proprietary property data, or Brookfield's, which they then sell to other people through RPS Real Property Solutions, okay? So they have an arm that they sell services to professional users. These professional users are all clueless. They believe Royal LePage, they believe a Phil Soper knows what he's talking about. You ask Phil Soper a question, he'll just regurgitate a whole bunch of myths because he believes them. Because Phil Soper didn't sell thousands of houses over multiple generations, over multiple decades. He's just a talking shill for Royal LePage. And his goal is one thing. That's to keep real estate agents working at Royal LePage. That's his only legal responsibility. The fact that the press doesn't call him out and say, hey, isn't your sole job to keep Royal LePage, keep real estate agents paying desk fees at Royal LePage? No, they never ask them that question. They sit there and they blink their eyes and smile with a dumb look in their face, believing Phil Soper, the guy who is laughed at in real estate brokerages offices across Canada for decades. I mean, when I woke up in 2010 and found out Phil Soper was one of the guys that people actually believed, I couldn't believe it. And I'll tell you, till this day, my father still doesn't believe it. You have to remember, my dad at one time was the top realtor at Royal LePage, but that was before, that was in the 80s. He only stayed there for 7 months before he moved on. So this is the situation with that housing market report. Listeners, I'm sorry. It's another manipulation of you. It will have its intended results. It will secure more real estate agents re-upping their contracts with Royal LePage for another year. And I'm sad to say, you the consumer, you the home buyer, you are the poor person to pay for the needs of corporation to rent desks to real estate agents.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, all 6 major Canadian banks are now weighing in on policy changes or hands-off recommendations, solutions to affordability, and a lot of downplaying the events of the past year. Carl from Markham, Ontario asks, Ross, why the big 6 banks are all making different recommendations about the housing market and the changes that are needed? Why do they not get together and offer Canadians some hope, but speak with a single voice with a simple solution?
Oh, Carl, you were so wise. Why don't the 6 Canadian banks all have the same talking points? Well, this is why. And it goes back, actually, to the first question we were posed from Trevor and Duncan, Jim. Each of the 6 Canadian banks has a mortgage book. In other words, the mortgages that the bank holds that are all structured totally different. CIBC aggressively went after mortgages between 2013 and 2015. You can go Google this stuff, folks. You'll see where the bank says the CIBC said we are pulling away from the resale housing market. They actively say this in their reports because they have to let their shareholders know what's going on. Well, the reason they had to do that was they had lent out so much mortgage debt in that couple of years, trying to build up their mortgage book because of previous decisions that they had made that were wrong, including some corporate decisions where they had to make a huge payout to their that reduced their stock value. They had to book a whole bunch of mortgages so they could get the revenue that those mortgages would create for them in the years to come. Then they realized, that's about when the housing bubble was making headlines in 2015, and all of a sudden, people were saying, Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce has been too aggressive. And their CEO announces, that's okay, we're pulling back on taking mortgages. Then you go for a couple of years, and another bank, RBC, aggressively went at it. TD aggressively went at it. Scotiabank aggressively went, all in different time periods. The clients that those banks each attract are totally different. CIBC, for the sake of the argument, has always attracted a higher income family to their book. They have been arrogant about that in the past. In other words, they have held their mortgage rate discount higher. They won't give you as much of a discount as the other banks would. TD Bank, on the other hand, is receptive to pretty much any Canadian who will borrow money that makes the qualification standard. And as a result, they aggressively have worked with mortgage rate discounts. RBC, they have their practice. Scotia has their practice. All of National Bank, they have their practices. National Bank was the very first bank in Canada ever to give a guaranteed rate discount. Your listeners don't know this. The reason I know this is because we were the family who negotiated the very first guaranteed discount of a posted bank rate for our clients. We could actually run ads in 1989 that said, get 0.125% off the posted bank rate. Your listeners are, what are you talking about? People get, but back then, folks, you didn't get that. You didn't see any other realtor anywhere in Canada running an ad that said, get a 1/8% off of a posted 5-year bank rate. There was not another realtor in Canada who could run those ads. We were able to run those ads because National Bank was looking to more aggressively go after the mortgage book, and they came into Burlington, and the mortgage manager came over from another branch, and he came and asked us for his help. We used our power. Sorry, you want our business? We're already giving most of it to TD. You give us a guaranteed interest rate guaranteed mortgage rate discount. They did it. First in Canada ever to have a guaranteed rate discount. Okay, so these sort of games go on all the time now today, where each bank is going for a couple of quarters where they're aggressively going after mortgages. Their clients are financially different. The average client they deal with is radically different from one bank to another, and that impacts their mortgage book. So all 6 banks, their economists, have to give talking points that don't hurt their bank and their shareholders. So you'll have one bank economist or CEO come out and say, we don't need anything to happen to slow down the housing market. We just got to keep our hands off and let it go where it goes. You'll have another bank come out and say, we need to do something to slow this market down. Things are getting a little out of hand. And you'll have another bank come out and say, it's regional in nature, so, we need to put tools in place regionally. You'll have other banks come out and say, the solution is we need to build the housing stock. Well, guess what? Odds are very high that is a bank that deals with new builders more than the other banks do. Every single one of these banks talks their mortgage book. So when I hear Benjamin Tell, I hear a Victor Duguid, I hear a Porter, I hear an Arsenault, I hear all these guys talking, and when I'm hearing them talking, what I'm actually hearing is the way that they're talking up their mortgage book. I understand that they're not really speaking truth. They're speaking a message, the message that protects their shareholders. I understand that that's what they do because it's what they've always done. When you're selling houses to VPs, mortgage managers, transferred clients, when you're handling the foreclosures for these banks, you gain this knowledge over a period of time, which is something that we were lucky enough to be able to do. So when I hear them talking, that's what I'm actually hearing. I'm understanding that what they're saying, the message, is a message for their bank. This is why you will never get the 6 banks agreeing to come up with a message. You are not going to hear the banks all say, we should reduce the gross debt service ratio to 36%. You're not going to get that because some banks wanted it at 39, other banks wanted it at 32, other banks may want it at 30%, depending on how their mortgage book is structured in this quarter. 2 quarters from now, they may want something totally different because they're looking to generate as much profit as they can from their mortgage book. This is why, Carl, you don't hear a conclusive, a singular policy. And I don't know if this is true or not, but it's very possible this is where they feign innocent. Oh, we don't really know what the solutions are, but maybe this is what we could do. So here's the solutions what they should be doing, and they won't bring up. Number 1, remove mortgage commissions, remove real estate commissions from the appraised value of a home. If you want to buy $1 million home and you want to pay a realtor $50,000 in commission plus HST for 24 hours of so-called work, you go right ahead and do it. But don't ask the Canadian taxpayer to allow you to carry that in your mortgage. Don't ask us to insure mortgages that there is no possible way that a first-time buyer can extract themselves from. That's the policy that I want. But they won't do that because they would have to then admit that every mortgage that they booked over the last 60 years that included commission was a fraud, which is exactly what is going on. Look, imagine a first-time buyer buys a $100,000 home. I'm going to use $100,000 to make it easy. They have 5% down, $5,000 down. Now here's the magic. CMHC is going to charge them 4% premium on their default insurance. Okay, now we're back up to a $99,000 mortgage. The house that they buy, if you had to sell it, would have to pay 5% commission plus HST. Okay, so now we would have to get $104,000 for that house. Now, because of the way that the mortgage policy is structured, you may have actually borrowed your 5% down from your parents, who gave you a little letter that said it was a gift. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. 5 year, when the mortgage renews in five years, that's when we want our money back with interest. Okay, so now we're at another $5,000. Okay, so now we're at $109,000. You have a $100,000 home that you would have to get $109,000 for just to break even, not including lawyers' fees, land transfer tax, all of the other nonsense. When we hear people making these ludicrous comments, Jim, about people are profiting, made 20% on their house in the last year. Okay, wait a second. First of all, you're going to pay 5% to sell the house, and you're going to pay HST on the commission. That's number 1. So that already knocks off 5.5% of your gain. So now we're down to 14.5%. You are also going to have to pay land transfer tax. Depending on the city that you bought in, that number can be a massive number, right? Remember, Toronto land transfer tax is double what it is in Vaughan. Okay, so now we're going to knock off another 6% of your value. Okay, so now we're down to 9%. Now we have your lawyer's fees. 2 times, remember, because you bought the house and now you're selling it. All your appraisal fees, your mortgage discharge fees, everything that's associated. If you're lucky, on a 20% house price gain, you make 5%. There is no time in Canadian history, except for 1988, where nationally house prices increased at 20% year over year. No other time. Everybody thinks that these house price records you're hearing right now are a record. No, they're not, folks. The only record was way back in the 1980s. That's when you hit. Canadian house prices have never gone up 20% in a year. Never. Except in the 1980s. Now, everybody believes that that's true, but you can go right to the Canadian Real Estate Website Association's website and see that it's not true. But Ross, yeah, you did. The most damaging thing that ever happened to Canadian homebuyers was the release of sold data. Everybody thought this was going to be the game changer. Well, we knew it wasn't. It was the game changer was going to create more of a false narrative because you don't know how to look at houses on an MLS. This is no different than talking about the 6 banks. People who are not experts in how to read MLS transactional data, even the simple listings that are on realtor.ca, don't have any idea what they're actually looking at. They think they know, but they don't. It takes years and years and years. You need to cover thousands and thousands and thousands of listings, your own and other people, in order to even get a basic understanding of how to read sold data or active listing data. You have to know how the banks all interact, how their mortgage books are probably structured. You can be we're relatively reliable on that. You have to understand where the CEOs are worried about their risk or not worried about their risk, how future profits can be generated from the mortgage book, or where the future profits are going to be going. People don't understand. Canadian banks' mortgage books today are losing their profit margin at a record pace because of the way that their mortgage books are structured. Canadian banks made huge profits off their mortgage books in the late 1980s, early 1990s. Huge profits that they could only dream of on a per dollar length basis versus today. Right now, the mortgage books are shrinking so rapidly. In other words, the amount of interest that they're collecting each month is shrinking so rapidly, the bank CEOs and presidents who get their bonuses from the profits of the bank have got to be pulling their hair out. Again, something that is never disclosed to the Canadian public. The OSFI doesn't disclose it because they don't understand how it works. Now, I'm sure if you sat down with the OSFI, the same as gross debt service ratio at 39%, and if you explained to them why you needed a variable gross debt service, and you showed them the data, that they would believe you. Okay, I'm sure that they would believe you, but someone needs to do that. The reason why the 6 Canadian banks will all not have a single voice is because their mortgage books are all totally different. And when you see an economist speak, you see a bank report get released, you see headlines from quoting a bank CEO or a bank economist, you should understand that all they're actually doing is talking up the profit for their shareholders. They are not speaking to give you a solution. I watched today as Scotia, the new CEO of CMHC, Romy Bowers, she sent out a tweet, "Thank you to Scotia for your commitment to affordable housing." And we think to ourselves, nonsense. Scotia's only doing this because they know they can make a profit off it. There's no thanks needed. What Romy Bowers needed to do was go to the pension funds that are out there, specifically the Ontario Pension Fund, who today announced they were going to get out of the retail real estate sector because they got burned in the last year, and show them how the numbers work on affordable housing, affordable rental housing, because those pension funds should be fully invested in affordable rental housing. This is what I'm trying to communicate to our listeners. Look, if there's so much money available in pension funds of government employees, okay, so these were people who spent their careers working for the taxpayer, who were paid a premium wage by working with the taxpayer, had premium benefits by working for the Canadian taxpayer, premium privileges before they worked because they worked at the Canadian taxpayer, are now ignoring the Canadian taxpayer's problem, which is affordable rental housing. When, instead of being greedy and seeking maybe a 9 or 10% gain, they could get a guaranteed rate of return of between 6 and 8%, depending how the deal is structured. Canadian banks won't speak to that, because if that happens, all of a sudden, their bank profits for mortgages shrinks even more.
Ross, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Jim.
My guest has been home ownership consultant Ross Kay from the wealthyhomeowner.ca. If you have any questions for Ross, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HouseStreet, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HouseStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HouseStreet.com radio is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.